Welcome, Margie. Welcome to Fashion Business Mindset.
Hi, Elizabeth. Thanks for having me.
I'm excited to chat all things Viktoria Woods today. But before we dive into the business, I would love for you to set the scene for our listeners and share a little bit of insight into your journey up until this point before you launched Viktoria Woods. And of course, you've been trading for many years now.
Yeah, well, it's 17 years old this year. So looking back is actually a really long time ago, but I did have a fashion background. I never studied fashion. I did study marketing and even a Bachelor of Arts prior to that. But my very first, I guess, proper job was in the fashion industry. Initially, it was with a fashion jeweler who used to do a lot of catwalk, sort of couturier type of jewelry. And then she branched out. Her name was Candy Spender. And then she branched out into wholesale jewelry, so a lot more of a commercial arm to her business. And I was with her quite early in her business and watched her grow and grow her team. And then my next, I guess, real role was the sales and marketing manager role at Metallicus, which is, I don't think it's around today, but when I was there and the day that I left, and I was there for probably, I think, maybe 5 to 7 years. I'm just trying to think. But it grew from quite a, reasonable size business to an extremely large business, which was not only wholesaling overseas, but it became a retailer. And I think about a year after I'd left that role, I think they sold it for a sum of money. And then, but my role there was really diverse because I started when it was quite, smallish. And, my role was very much on the product side of it, as well as the sales side of it, and very much in the marketing side of it. So I guess I really got a very broad insight into the industry, what works. I was able to work very closely with the director and the owner over there, and anyone else who was who had a really important role in the business. And in a lot of ways, I shaped how the business grew. Well, I was a part of what shaped how the business grew. So I think that background was really important to where I am now.
Yeah, no doubt, Margie. I mean, all of that experience, as you said, such diverse experience right across, all sectors or all kind of, I guess, arms of the business would have served you, no doubt, very well when you launched your own business. And as you said, you're 17 years into it. When I look at your launch date, 2004, you kind of don't do the maths. You go, 2004, it doesn't seem that long ago, but 17 years.
Yeah.
So talk to us about the inspiration behind launching Viktoria Woods, because you could have done anything, but this is where you decided to dive into. What was the inspiration? And bring us up to speed, if you can, in terms of where the business is now.
Okay. Well, I think the inspiration, like so many new businesses back then in 2004, came out of a gap in my own wardrobe. And that was for, I think I really had a very, even back then, quite a simple approach to dressing, but I always wanted to feel quite put together, and I wanted it to be quite purposeful. And for me, what was missing in my wardrobe was really simple, but really beautiful quality basics that were also quite contemporary. So, maybe basics back then, probably didn't take you, from home and into the workspace or even out. Whereas I felt that that's where the gap was, that something that could be so simple, made from a quality fabric, could also be really modern and, I guess, transcend the type of occasion that it can be worn. So that's what I set out to do. And I produced my first 100% merino cardigan, made in Australia in a variety of colours. And I walked out with my suitcase with this one cardigan in a few colours, and knocked on the doors of probably the best boutiques in Melbourne, and then around in Australia as well. So they were all multi-brand boutiques that I loved shopping in, and very luckily they loved it. The second I opened up that suitcase, they got it and they loved it, and ordered. And I guess the rest is really history. I started to grow the type of fabrications that I'd work with, but I always had the same philosophy in mind, that I wanted it to be, you know, a quality garment, something that I felt was really essential in the wardrobe. And, you know, I wanted it to really transcend seasons, occasions, and definitely transcend trends. So it had to be really quite timeless.
Well, it's obviously resonated with the industry and the market because, as you said, here you are 17 years later. But great for our listeners to hear that, Margie, you know, how you kind of hit the pavement. It was, you know, a very laser focused offer that you had. You had that bravery to go into all of those boutiques.
Mm-hmm.
It resonated, and then you gained that traction.
Yeah.
So for those listening, can you fast forward to 2021 and just give an overview of what the business looks like today across all channels? You have brick and mortar stores, you've got online, you've got wholesale. It's a very dynamic business model.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, can you share, you know, how that's grown and what it does look like today?
Yeah. So today we have about 10 boutiques around Australia. We just opened up on Monday, actually, that just passed. We just opened up in Perth, in Claremont. And we also have about 9 David Jones concession stores, which basically means we staff them and we stock them and we fit them out. So it's almost like a boutique within David Jones. And we obviously have an online channel as well, and a very small wholesale channel. Yeah.
So Margie, how do you feel when you look at that, when you look back on that journey and you look at what you've grown? How does it make you feel?
Yeah, I'm definitely proud. I guess for some reason, you know, the years have really flown by. Mm-hmm. And I still find myself saying, oh, you know, we're a small business and blah, 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 and have a very small business mentality about it. But in fact, we're not. We're a medium-sized business. Maybe some might call us a large business. And I guess sort of I'm always the small mindset, which is a little bit dangerous, but it's also an opportunity, you know what I mean? So I'm trying to balance that mindset, but also be realistic with the size that we are right now.
Yeah, totally. I think there's benefits with both approach.
Exactly.
So can you share with our listeners, like, what is a day in your life like? So are you very hands-on in the business? I want to talk to you about, you know, the creative process behind your collections, but how hands-on are you with the day-to-day running of your business?
Well, I'm the creative director, but I'm also the general manager. Yeah. And I guess with my diverse background, I'm really incredibly hands-on. I'm also the sole director of the business too. I don't have a partner. So I guess, you know, the buck sort of really stops with me on everything. You know, in design, there are times where I let go a little bit, and there's times where I really lean into it, you know. I still brief every collection. I'm still incredibly hands-on with, you know, from signing off on the CADs that we do to the first toiles and making changes to those toiles, which are at first sample. And, you know, even signing off on color boards, fabric selection. Yeah. But, you know, as even 3 years ago, I was even selecting the fabric. So, you know, the journey's kind of been slow for me to even just to get here, to be not actually selecting the fabric and in the design room the whole time. So I am trying to let go a little bit, but it's, you know, I think when you're the creative director, and it's your brand out there, and it's a reflection of you. It's really hard not to be involved in so many parts of it. And then even in marketing, I still have my weekly marketing meetings with my team, and I'm really quite across what we do there. And even with, I guess COVID, just what happened last year with COVID, I had to be very hands-on with HR and the communications with our staff, down to how we managed our finances. I guess, it really does, the buck really does stop with me. I really have to be super hands-on in all of that.
Yeah, I was going to say, to sum it up, without a doubt, we can see how hands-on you are across all of those arms of your business,
Yeah.
which I guess, that is one of the biggest challenges for a business like yours. You've created this brand. You are integral from, that foundation to where you are today. So it's very hard. It's one of the challenges to step back as your business is scaling. And I guess, going forward, it's about looking at where your time is best spent to ensure that the DNA of Viktoria Woods continues in those areas where it's crucial, that it can't be diluted. But with your team, it sounds like you've got quite a robust team. Can you talk us through who you have on your team? Who is your right-hand person when it comes to design, when it comes to marketing, operations, and how has that grown? Were they people you had connections with in the industry prior, or how did you grow your team over this period of time?
Yeah, I think it's important to note that, when I first started the brand, there was a Viktoria, and she was my very original partner. And I guess she knew how to pattern make, and she knew how to source fabric. And she was really good on that production side of things. So, nothing happens on your own. You really need to network with the right people and surround yourself by people who are really capable of, because you might have an idea, but executing is a very different thing. You just can't be all things. So, along my journey from the day that I started the business to now, I've always had, people who, I count on for running their department and doing it really, really well. And I'm always, trying to think of the next person to really build up and mentor. So that, I guess, the job of my senior team is really their mentors to their team. So I always say, how are we going to build this team up? What are we going to do to build them up? And I guess that's how your, as you said, your sort of the DNA. Sorry, I'm going to switch that phone off. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Yeah, I guess that's how you continue that DNA, by constantly building up your staff. And
Totally. I couldn't agree more. We hold a very high regard for mentorship and professional and personal development. And I think that's the only way. That's the only way for you to be able to kind of, rise up to do what you need to do, which is work on the business and not so much in the business. So such a powerful position to be in when you are investing in the development of your team and your support system, essentially. So that sounds really exciting, and it sounds very, very dynamic.
Yeah.
So can I just ask, what do you see, Margie, is your unique point of difference right now? So you mentioned, when you started the brand, it was about elevated basics. And of course, we know that local supply chain was very much part of the ethos of your business, sustainability. There's so many really important elements to your brand.
Mm-hmm.
But when you look at the retail landscape at the moment, and of course what we've been through over the last 12 months, a little bit over 12 months now, what do you see that has resonated with your customers compared to other brands out there at the moment that really sets you apart?
Yeah, I guess, it is a really competitive landscape, and especially in the area of business that I'm in. There's a lot of basics brands out there, I guess, and and a lot of brands really doing it well. But I guess what we've done that a lot of brands maybe haven't is we've really remained true to who we are. And, I've seen so many brands kind of shift their focus, and then you wonder, which makes them more on trend, I guess, than really a brand. So like I've seen some brands be, really more a dressy brand for many years of their existence, and then suddenly shift into a completely different model. And so you often wonder with those type of brands, well, are they going to shift again when the tide shifts? Whereas we will remain true, but the way we do it is, the way we remain relevant by staying true is that we continue to try and be very modern in our approach. And I think that's really worked for us. And, the customer that we have, I just got a report literally on the weekend about a customer who is in one of our Sydney boutiques, who says that she's been shopping with the brand since 2004. And, she's got a wardrobe full of Viktoria Woods, but for somehow she keeps pulling out these pieces from so long ago. And I think that that's a massive part of our success, that you can buy something today and it will probably suit something that you bought from us 10 years ago and mix back. And I think that that's really what's, kept the loyalty for our brand alive, and really worked for us.
I think you've articulated that beautifully, because I had in my mind when I asked you that question, I thought to myself, timeless investment pieces. That's the way I see your brand, and the pieces that I've had for many, many years. And every time I wear them, I get compliments on them. Mm-hmm. And I think one of your jackets, it was a coat with a leather kind of collar and leather trim at the cuffs. It's got like a bit of a lurex thread through the fabric.
Yeah.
And I've had it for years. I feel like I've had it for 10 years, if not like 8 or 10 years. And every time I wear it, someone says, "Where'd you get that jacket?" And so, as you said, the style doesn't date. They're elevated basics that are timeless, and you can wear them, and you can elevate the look with trend pieces if you're, if you like to have that little bit of edge of trend.
That's
and
right.
You can reinvent them season after season. So
absolutely.
I think that's exactly the way I felt about the brand, in terms of, the uniqueness of it compared to others out there. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
I'd love to touch on sustainability. So from inception, the use of sustainable fabrications has been an intrinsic part of your brand. So can you talk us through your approach to sustainability across, textiles, everlasting designs, the ethical accreditation that you have? Because I think it's so important now, and absolutely to the future of fashion.
Like I said before, when the brand first started, it was with 100% merino wool. And then when we started to diversify our fabrications, we went into 100% cotton, and then we went into silks. So for one reason or another, I was always drawn to quite natural fabrics. And although it wasn't a, kind of an on-trend conversation to talk about sustainability back then, I could honestly say probably from the day that I even ever had a brand bio, it was always about, that these footprints, not only are they luxurious, but they leave a lighter footprint on the planet. And it was very much how the brand started and continues to evolve today. We do sometimes nowadays mix with poly, but often I will do that if I feel that it will strengthen maybe the garment that we pull together, or allow it to recover better and ultimately last a lifetime in your wardrobe. And we also work very closely with our suppliers, our mills, to constantly improve, whether it be, are we using recycled polyester if we are using polyester, or, other advancements. But it's often not easy, and it's often a really slow process with the supply chain, but there's just so many amazing things coming out in the market now that, it makes that part of our job a lot easier, to have diversity in our fabrications, but also remain true to that sustainable ethos. But I guess, what matters the most with sustainability is that you are able to keep that garment forever. You are able to hand it down to your daughter, to your friend, to your sister. And I think that, what you spend on and care for and will ultimately and that timeless piece that you can mix and match, over time. I think that's the most sustainable way of looking at fashion ultimately.
I would agree. I would agree.
Yeah.
Not disposable, not fast fashion.
That's right. I mean, you can go into one of the high street stores and get something that's made from, let's say, organic cotton, or even from Kmart that says BCI cotton. But really, how much value do you place on that garment ultimately? What is the quality of make? Where was it made? Are you going to value it in your wardrobe? There's so many things that come into a sustainable wardrobe, and it's not just one thing. It's a collection of things, really.
Totally multifaceted. Has there been anything, Margie, in the sustainability space that you've really wanted to solve, that you've gone, I wish there was a solution to that, or something you can see that's coming, down the pipeline that you're very close to solving? What have been some of the biggest challenges?
Look, we use one of our core fabrications is bamboo, and it's really amazing. So we'll make our tailored pants and blazers from there. They're really quite relaxed because bamboo is quite a relaxed fabric. And what's amazing about it is that it actually breathes in summer. One time I was literally wearing a long pant, and I remember this day so well. It was about 40 degrees, and I'd just come from the NGV where Anna Wintour was being hosted, and it was like a 40-degree day. I had to find a cab walking down, and for some reason I was fine wearing this black long pant in bamboo. And it's such a great fabric, but we have to blend it with some poly for it to work and last a lifetime. So we're currently in in development mode to constantly improve the I guess what the composition of it, I should say. I think we're at about 80% bamboo in that blend at the moment, and we're trying to increase that even further. So that's one of the things that we're constantly working on. That's just one of many things that we constantly work on with our supply chain.
Yeah, it's great to know. Great to share that with our listeners, because I think for any brand out there, it is about that constant fine tuning of the processes and adding that dose of reality. What is that realistically going to do to the lifespan of that garment, the wearability, the functionality, all of those things have to be taken into consideration. But I think it's really exciting to hear that your focus is on longevity and that handing down and, not disposing of these pieces. I think that's just so crucial.
Yeah.
Margie, I'd like to dive into sales and marketing now. So you mentioned earlier how, the channels of your business, you have stores, you have online, you have wholesale. It's really multifaceted. So can you talk to our listeners about your biggest market and how you approached expanding your brand over the years, and why you did choose brick and mortar as quite a aggressive strategy with your growth of your brand, where lots of people out there would have been shying away from that. You've just opened a store, as you said. You opened another store in Perth, which is exciting. So congrats on that.
Thank you.
But I'm sure our listeners would love to hear more.
Yeah, I don't know why I did it. I just, my first store was a pop-up store. And but I always had in the back of my mind, look, if this worked, this is the exact location that I'd want to have a store, and it was in High Street, Armidale. And from the very day we opened, it did actually work, funnily enough. So I guess there was, I've always had a strong online business, and also a strong wholesale business. So I guess we always had a following. That same year that I opened up that first pop-up store, which became a permanent store in Armidale, I also launched into David Jones as a wholesaler. And I think what coincided with that is that more and more people, because David Jones is such a large retailer, um, more and more people almost overnight knew the brand as well. So I had my very loyal following, and then I had this new following, a new exposure that I'd never had before. And I guess the David Jones customer really took to the brand, and it was a real success from day one over there. So yeah, I guess that gives you the confidence to open up one, and then suddenly you kind of find yourself opening up another. And you know, that was my strategy. I, you know, sat down with my team at the time, and we decided these are the areas that we wanted to be in, or we wanted to, part of our journey was to be an Australian brand, not just a Melbourne brand, I guess. And then that strategy started diversifying the locations that we were in. And yeah, I guess that's how it all started. Yeah.
So it sounds like it was really organic.
Very organic. I mean, it wasn't
Yeah.
until 2014, so that's 10 years after I'd opened the business, that I opened my first retail store. So that's a long time. It's not
Yeah.
something that just happened overnight, or I decided overnight. It was definitely very slow, very organic, very considered. Yeah, and I think that, you know, my entire journey as the brand, it's always been like that, you know.
Mm.
I
And
don't feel in a rush. I don't feel worried that, oh, look what that brand's doing now, or you know, how we're going to work with that. I just know to stay in my lane, and you know, make sure I'm constantly trying to excite the customer and bring newness to the customer, but also just to stay in my lane and be very confident with that lane.
yeah, well, there's no doubt that approach is working for you, based on the loyal following that you have. So, Margie, what about through COVID? What was it like, you know, through the height of what we were going through and store closures? And so, did you accelerate the e-commerce of your business? What did you do through
Yeah, I
that
guess.
time?
Yeah, well, I guess we had to move a lot of stock that was in our stores onto our online um, warehouse. So yes, that grew, but that's just because we had the stock for it to grow, because we'd already committed to the stock. And you know, we also happened the first lockdown was in the middle of winter, which is our strongest season, I guess. And we just had the right product for you know, I guess working from home, or you know, being at home. It was just the perfect product for that time. But you know, by the time the second lockdown came around, that was a much more difficult time. First of all, it was a longer and much harder lockdown. And I'm a Melbourne made brand. Our factories even closed down. So that really had a major impact on our business. But because of the, I guess, clever way we managed our business on the first lockdown and managed our cash on the first lockdown, it really helped us get through that second one. And if we hadn't have managed it well in the first lockdown, look, I don't really know, like, how, like, we still have a stock position because of that second lockdown to this day. And I would assume a lot of fashion brands would have that same stock position or a similar one. So it really did have quite a big impact on our industry. But I think if you know, I guess, are really kind of, if you're a strong brand, you're going to be okay. You know what I mean? People seem to have a loyalty to brands, that certain brands that they can trust. And I guess if you're one of those strong brands that have a loyal following, your customers do stick with you, or they turn to you when they need something. And I think that that's really helped us as well.
So, Margie, is there anything you're doing differently? So, based on that experience and
Mhm.
what you faced, especially during that second lockdown, those challenges, as you've rightly said, you know, those businesses that were not cash flow positive would have struggled at that time if sales had to pause or heavily reduce for a period of time. So looking at future proofing your business, are you looking at driving e-commerce more heavily than you have in the past? Are you looking at innovation, technology, doing business virtually with some of your wholesale accounts? Any of those things that you're changing in the business just to ensure that, you know, you're future proofing essentially?
Yeah, I mean, during the lockdown, the two lockdowns in particular, second one, we implemented a really big project. My team worked really hard actually to install a new back-end system into our business, which now enables us to click and collect or, pick up from store, and it starts to talk to our online a lot more seamlessly, and, you know, does all these amazing things that helps us to be a true, what we call an omni-channel, like a true holistic sort of brand way of managing our brand, so that, the customer might shop online, but she might pick it up in store, or she might jump online to a customer service team who might be in store. Everything kind of works together. And I think that that's what we really, really focused on. And if by doing that, it kind of doesn't matter what happens out there, whether we do shut down again, each one of those bricks and mortar and our online channel can still all work together to service that customer's needs. And I think that that's probably the biggest implementation that we focused on during the lockdown.
Really powerful strategy to make sure that you've got all your bases covered, essentially. You're controlling your own destiny. It's not like if one thing shuts down, it's like, that's it, that's the end of it. You're able to really navigate and access all your customers can access you through another channel. So really powerful. Thank you for sharing that. So in terms of future expansion, so you mentioned you've already opened another store recently. Again, your timing is very brave, but you obviously are very optimistic about retail at the moment. What about your future kind of strategy, Margie? Will it be, you know, more stores? Will it be more wholesale partners? Will it be international expansion? Is there anything you can share with our listeners in terms of, you know, where they can follow the brand's journey in the future?
Yeah. Well, I honestly believe that even with the channels that we currently have and the store footprint that we currently have, that we have still a really long way to go. I think we can perform and be even more relevant to the warmer states, and we're still getting to know those warmer states a lot more, whereas in Melbourne, we're a very established brand. And we have the right product categories for them. So I'm really excited about becoming even more, multi-seasonal, not just, an autumn winter brand with a little bit of summer here and there. I'm kind of excited to grow each season for our brand. And therefore our growth in those other states, the warmer states. Maybe we open up in New Zealand next. We're dabbling a little bit overseas. I have to be honest, it's not something we're really focusing on. It's just opportunities that have come to us that we're, exploring. But really, I think we've got a long way to go right here in Australia in becoming a really, in Australia, a really at the core, an Australian brand. International is really difficult. The seasonality is really opposite, and they're really extreme. Their seasons are a lot more extreme than ours. So, yeah, I just want to make sure we're really good at what we do here first.
Well, I think it's great to hear after 17 years, you've still got room to grow in the Australian marketplace, because many brands would be chasing, the offshore dollar essentially. And often we see them focusing 80% of their time with international and 20%, kind of in Australia. So it's great to hear that your focus is here. I see you are in Harvey Nichols in London. And
we're in Selfridges at the moment. Well, we've actually got a concept store in Selfridges, not a
Yeah,
concession, a concept
yeah,
store. So we're putting a lot of focus on that particular retailer at the moment. But like I said, it's not our main focus, really. It's
yeah.
over here that is our main focus.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but it's certainly exciting to be
yeah,
placed in those iconic retailers.
yeah,
Be
absolutely.
showcasing there is super exciting, and
Yeah,
hopefully that will feed back into your e-commerce business as
yeah.
well.
So yeah.
So yeah, thanks for sharing that. So from a marketing perspective, Margie, what has been, what's really been quite powerful over the journey? So, from social media to email marketing to influencers to, for our listeners, a lot of our listeners are emerging designers. They might be in their first, 3 to 5 years of business, and then we've got the rest of the trade as well. But for those in the startup kind of early days of business, what have you found has been, the tactics and the strategies that have given you the most traction? I'm sure there's been lots that have been tried and tested for you over the journey, but what's worked for your brand?
So I guess, when I think about, it was always our own voice and our language that we used to connect with whoever our audience was at that time. And I think, understanding that rather than just using maybe an influencer to push yourself out there. It's one thing to have an influencer wearing your product, but you're going to have a range of products to sell. And the only way to sell that is to have a real true brand identity. And one person is not going to make your brand identity. It might put some eyeballs onto you, but you have to do the rest. So for me, I've always focused on, what brand story are we telling and how are we telling that? And is that true to our voice and what we're trying to say out there? So I think, again, it's really remaining true about who you are, what you want to do, and it really does start there. Yes, you can use influencers to, like I said, put maybe sell one product for you, but they're not going to sell your entire collection. They're probably going to help you sell that one product and
Yeah.
put some eyeballs there. So I think that's, for me, my biggest advice that I can give. Yeah, the second social media came around, it wasn't about the influencer for me. It was about telling our story the way we wanted to tell it,
And
not
so
relying
when,
on a magazine to mix it with a whole lot of other products in a way that I would never wear it, or a way that my customer would never wear it. So
yeah.
you kind of control your own voice.
And with the channels, so that voice, so that story, that consistent story, that authentic story is being told obviously in your stores at the coalface to your
Yeah.
customers through your staff in stores, and the way that you merchandise your collections, being told organically on your social media. I'm assuming there's that narrative is continuing through your email marketing. How else do you get that out there?
Um,
Events?
yeah, I guess it's events. It's our the girls in store,
Yeah.
and it's really, you're talking about your brand when they're all put together. We call it staff style, but it's really their style. There's not one girl who works there that doesn't honestly love the brand and love wearing it the way that they do, and yeah, so yeah, I guess it's all things. It really, really is, from how the cut the store, the staff are selling, even how they style the customer, how they clientele, and how they build relationships, and really try and understand that customer. It's just so many little things that that you can use to market, I guess. Yeah.
And it sounds like quite a personal, it's a personal relationship in the communication. So that opportunity, I think that, you're having your own 10 stores, having that opportunity to be able to have that dialogue in person is really powerful. And then you've also got the concession stores in David Jones that you're fully staffing, correct?
Yeah,
so
that's
they're
right.
your staff as well. So powerful, I guess, arm of your business, that brick and mortar, direct to consumer, and having that direct line to be able to communicate that voice, and it not get diluted through other channels, essentially, because it's such a personal experience. Thanks for sharing that, Margie. So, Margie, now if one business wasn't enough to tackle, you also have another. So, the Loft Agency. Can you tell our listeners about the Loft Agency? I believe you launched it the same year as Viktoria Woods. Is that right?
I literally launched it on the same day, pretty much.
So tell us about that. Tell us about the agency.
I know, it's really quite bizarre, really, I guess. But I just had. So I started my own little line, but I also had an opportunity to sell two other brands, which were also emerging back then, just through connections, through networks. So I also started an agency called the Loft Agency. And so one of the brands that the Loft was representing at the time, which was me basically, was my own brand, I guess. So I went out with my brand, but I also on other days went out with other brands. And now I actually have a studio that everyone comes to. And the brand, the Loft is now, I've got a general manager who runs the whole thing. So it's a business in its own right. But I guess what it really does is helps launch emerging labels and existing labels. But, it helps successfully launch emerging labels by positioning them in stores that with like-minded brands or the right customer base for them. So I think the Loft now today might have about 25 brands under its stable. It's quite a large agency in the Australian market. And we have a head office in Sydney as well as in Melbourne. But, I'm really lucky to have a great team there and a general manager who really treats it like her own. And you should really talk to her one day. She's quite amazing.
Yeah, look, no doubt lots of people listening, they'll be hearing, oh my gosh, someone who's open to representing emerging brands. I think, look, that's the hardest thing. We work with a lot of emerging designers and startups, and, especially when it comes to wholesale, having, I guess, the experience to gain traction in wholesale yourself when you're trying to get your direct to consumer of your business up and running. It's a lot to navigate in those early days.
Mm-hmm.
So often, labels that we're working with, they're looking for assistance. And we have quite a few mentors on our team. We're really fortunate that have wholesale experience. But finding the right agencies to actually, for those brands to be able to work with, it's not easy because we know what's involved. And essentially it takes a unique approach, I think, to work with those in the early days of business. There's that mentoring element to what you're doing. It's just not an agency.
Very much mentoring, positioning correctly. They've got, it's got a very large database that's been built over 17 years, I guess.
Yeah, it's great to hear that you've got a general manager, because I was wondering, how is Margie managing these?
No, it's like, she does it all. She's amazing. Yeah.
That's really good. But we'll put all of the info for the Loft Agency in our show notes as well. So because we could literally have this whole conversation again just about the Loft. But thank you for sharing that. So, Margie, we know that fashion, it's not just about mastering creativity and design and the business side. There's a whole lot more to it, and mindset is a big piece to what we do. Mm-hmm. Can you share with our listeners any practices or support systems that you have to help you with mindset and well-being while you are running the business that you are?
Yeah. Well, I guess it shifts a lot over time. Right now, I do take some amazing vitamins that really help keep my energy levels up, like vitamin B and vitamin C. So I'm really big on all of that. But I also see a Chinese doctor, and I get acupuncture and have my Chinese herbs. So I'm really into, I love that sort of alternative, wellness approach. I'm kind of very much focused on all of that at the moment, the whole different ways of achieving wellness. So I'm really quite passionate about it at the moment. I just came back from Eden Health Retreat, which was amazing. So it was a week away with no phones, no internet, just focusing on me, focusing on rest, really good diet, and and it honestly felt like 3 weeks away, but it was only 2. And I think a large part of that was just I was unable to stay connected through internet or anything. So yeah, I guess I always carve time out for things like that. My friends mean so much to me. I'm down at the beach probably every second weekend, if not every third weekend. I just do a lot, I guess, of those sort of things. I do try and switch off in different ways.
Yeah, it's great to hear. And there's a few things you've mentioned that I've absolutely embraced over the journey as well. The retreats are a must do when you can. I love Eden. I love Gwingana. I've been to Byron Bay Detox Retreat. I've tried them all over the journey to avoid that burnout, basically. Chinese medicine. I've got a Chinese doctor in South Yarra. I do the acupuncture. I do the herbs. I do my little kind of 2-month detox minimum every year.
Yeah.
If not 3 times.
I only do that once a year, but sometimes once every 2 years, I have to admit, which goes for 8 weeks. Mine, I'm not sure how long yours goes for, but mine goes for 8 weeks.
Yes, same. And I think it's important for our listeners to, when we're working at such a high, level, so much energy out, there's a lot of output. You've got to fill up your own cup. And I think it's important for our listeners just to hear from people like yourself that, this just doesn't magically happen. We're not superhuman. We all need support, whether that's people around us, practitioners around us, our outlets. It's so important. So thank you so much for sharing that. Now, Margie, we're coming to the end. So two quick fire questions. So any advice that you would have for emerging designers who are listening that are in the early days of their business? We've mentioned, the support that Loft Agency that offers, but anything else that, any top tips for them?
I think that, I started my business when I think I was 31 or something like that. Anyway, I was about 30 when I started my own business. And I think working for successful businesses prior to that, which give you a really broad, kind of hands-on, broad experience in those businesses is probably the best thing you can do. And there is no way, even to this day, 17 years on, that I don't value the experience and what I've learned with those other businesses and working with really strong business owners and mentors and really getting my hands dirty as well. I think there's so many young girls these days. Yes, they might start a new brand and they might be successful, but what does the brand start for? Is it just a fad brand or whatever? I just think slowing it down, there's really nothing wrong with that. Like some of the biggest brands in the entire world have been around for, like, I don't know, how long has Celine been around? Yes, they've constantly been reinvented, or Gucci or Louis Vuitton, all these heritage brands. There's no rush. A good brand, evolves over time. And I think that that's the best thing you can do, is really try and get some experience with some good established brands.
I absolutely love it. I think it's such important advice, as much experience as you can. I love the slowing it down, because I think everyone's in such a rush these days.
Yeah.
Got to do it now, got to succeed now, it's got to happen now. It's like, okay. And I think definitely the last 12 months, from all the conversations I've had, everyone's embracing that slowing down. I think that's one positive thing. It's one certainly silver lining that's come out of what we've experienced.
Yeah.
So Margie, just to finish off, what do you feel the future of fashion holds for the rest of 2021 and beyond?
I think that I'm not at all worried about the industry. I just think it's a constantly evolving one, which makes sense. It's fashion. It should be constantly evolving. I think fashion will always be powerful, whether that be in how the power in it, being able to enabling a customer to feel confident, or if its power might be in how the perceptions that it might leave on people, or it might be a form of escapism or dreaming. I just do not see how fashion will not always be relevant. You know, it could be someone, you might look at someone and say, hey, well, I can tell this person, you know, she wears vintage, then you kind of get an idea of who she is or what she believes in. I think it's always going to have an importance in our world. So I think it's only going to get better. I'm not at all worried. I do think it'll contract a little bit. So you know, the ones that are doing it, I don't think there'll be less room for ones that are not doing it well, I guess, or not doing it with integrity. There'll be less room for them in the market. But for the rest of us, I think we've got a really bright future.
Oh, well, what a perfect
Hope so.
sentiment to end on. No, I'm with you. Everything you just said, you articulated that beautifully. And I think it's so nice to end this interview on such a high note and a very optimistic one. We have absolutely loved following your journey. So here's to a successful another 17 years and beyond. We love everything you're about. So thank you so much for being so generous with your time and opening up the doors to Viktoria Woods today. It's been great to delve behind the scenes and hear about your journey. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, Margie.
Bye-bye.